The Long Game acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast is produced. We would also like to acknowledge any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders listening to this podcast. We would also like to acknowledge that mindfulness is an important and ongoing part of life.
Breathe in, breathe out. When the stakes are high and all eyes are on you, how do you perform to your potential? More than ever, the practice of mindfulness has become a pathway to harnessing potential to drive performance of athletes around the world.
Through the lens of some of Australia's most inspiring athletes and sport professionals, we take a deep dive into the different techniques, tools and life lessons they've learnt along the way.
I'm Ben Robbins, Head of Mental Health and Wellbeing at the St Kilda Football Club.
And I'm Jarryd Roughead. And this is The Long Game, brought to you by AIA Australia.
There's no doubt 7-time surfing world champion Layne Beachley has conquered the waves. On the surface, Layne's success is intimidatingly impressive, but her journey to the top was anything but easy. At 4 years of age, Layne was already surfing along Manly's pristine beaches without so much as a care in the world. Just a few years later, motivated by her need to feel worthy of love after learning she was adopted, had set her mind on becoming a world champion of the sport. We love talking to Layne about her philosophies on high performance, overcoming the egos of a male-dominated sport, and how she's now using her experiences to support the next wave of talent.
So here we are with our guest to this week's Long Game. We have Layne Beachley. Layne, welcome to the episode.
Thank you very much.
Can we start from the start for you, Layne? How does a young girl get into surfing?
A young girl is adopted into a beach-loving family of the last name Beachley, becomes a pro surfer, and she falls in love with the ocean before she can walk. Her dad's a surfer. Her older brother Jason's a surfer. So it's just natural for me to learn how to surf. My dad attempted to teach me how to surf, but ultimately I taught myself how to surf, which is indicative of my control freak nature. Yes. And then by the time I'm about 4 years of age, I'm paddling out the back on my own. By the time I'm 5, I've found my happy place. And the ocean to this day is still my place of solace, also my liquid Valium.
Do you still get in most days?
Yeah, my goal is to get in the water every day.
And what's the temperature at the moment where you are?
22 degrees in the water and about 12 degrees outside of it. So.
Yeah, we've got a high of 7 and a low of 1 at the moment here. So,
nasty. And what about the water?
No, that my aim isn't to get in the water every day. So I wouldn't know.
We need to get you in the water more often, Jarryd.
I look like Moby Dick, Layne, so I'm not gonna. It's just gonna look like one big white whale. So we're not gonna go there.
You're speaking to two red-headed, freckled, sort of Gippsland, inland country boys here.
Right.
A long way from the ocean. In fact, no, not really. Another story, but no. So nothing but admiration for what you do. But
Thank you.
So at 4 years of age, you're out by yourself on your board.
Yes.
How do you develop the confidence to do that? Where does that come from?
Well, the good thing is when you're a kid, as you know, Ben, when you're a kid, you're fearless and you are willing to learn and you're also willing to fail. And I grew up at a time when failure was okay. There wasn't the intrusion or the criticism and the immediate judgment and ridicule that's associated with social media these days, where people can anonymously just rip you apart just because you tried and you gave it a good crack. Whereas I grew up at a time where failure was actually celebrated because you knew you were actually having a crack and having a go, and then you were just getting back up and going again. You know, every single one of us have achieved something through failure. Actually, every single one of us have that in common because we all learned how to walk through failure. And as a 4-year-old, I was scared, of course, but confidence comes from the ability to believe that you can work it out as you go. You don't actually have the confidence then do it. You actually go and do it and you boost your confidence from that. And that's how I was able to boost my confidence. Plus, I had, support of my family and my friends around me that encouraged me and just kept making sure that I was safe and sound. And that's where it all started.
So that's interesting. So it was okay to fail. I assume that it was okay to fail within your family. So you had a parents or other family members that encouraged you to have a crack, See what happens. Do your best, which not everybody has that.
No, not especially today. There's so much pressure and expectation put on people from such a young age, which is unrealistic. I mean, I put an immense amount of pressure on myself later on in my career, which I know we'll come back to. So as a young kid, I just fell in love with surfing. I fell in love with the sense of freedom and connection and centeredness that I felt. And the ocean is a place where I truly learned how to surrender control and surrender to a force that I know is way more powerful than me. So it's a place where I now go to either heal my hurts or clear my mind or just deeply immerse myself in a force that's more powerful than me and just rinse my mind, body and soul. That's why I refer to it as my liquid Valium.
Okay, so you started out very young. How does surfing work, or how did it work for you? Like, you at some point you must have realised, okay, I have, like, it's a place you love being. Certainly, you know, intrinsically, it's a lot of enjoyment and your happy place, your liquid Valium. But at some point you realise, okay, I've got some ability here. What was that like, and where did that lead you?
Well, I didn't realise I had much ability until I was about maybe 12 or 13. Look, when I was 8 years of age, that's when my dad told me I was adopted. And that's when I'd created this very clear vision that I had to become a world champion at something to prove that I was worthy of love. Being told I was adopted filled me with a sense of worthlessness and abandonment and rejection issues, which I still hold on to this day. So I had to dedicate myself or commit myself to achieving something greater than me to validate myself. And so that's when this pursuit of becoming a world champion became very clear to me. But it wasn't until I was about 14 that I decided it was going to be surfing. And I had just progressed from my foamy, which I had decided that I needed to surf on a foamy until I was about 14, but I jumped off a little earlier because a friend who I met in high school, who was a year older than me, she was a surfer, the only surfer in school that I knew of, and I bought her a secondhand board. So I was able to progress to a fiberglass board when I was about 13. And that's when I started to realize the talent that I had, because being on a foamy all the time kind of held me back a little bit. And then I competed for the first time when I was 14 in a charity event, and I came dead last. And it was deeply distressing and disappointing, but it wasn't discouraging. It actually inspired me. It made me realize that for me to achieve my goal of becoming a world champion surfer, I have to work a whole lot harder. Up until that point, I was dedicated to become a world champion surfer, tennis player, cricketer, hockey player, soccer player, every sport that I played, I wanted to be the best in the world at. But surfing was just the one thing I kept daydreaming about. I kept wanting to be at the beach. I saw all the other sports that I played as a distraction from my surfing. So once I identified that surfing was where I wanted to be, then that's when I truly committed myself to pursuing that goal. And of course, there was plenty of speed bumps and obstacles and naysayers and critics telling me that it was an unviable option.
But you finished last in this charity event, and 3 years later you've turned professional.
Yeah.
So it's happened pretty quick.
Yeah, well, fortunately I started young. That was the advantage, that I started competing at such a young age. And, you know, when Benny asked me, where does the confidence come from? Look, the confidence came from having the willingness to have a crack. And so I came dead last in that event, and then I competed I kind of went back a step and started competing against girls my own age and in, regional scholastic titles and state scholastic titles. And I won one, and then I won the state scholastic titles. And then I went to the Australian, the national titles, which I really did not enjoy very much because of there was almost like an initiation for new kids on the block. It was part of this team. It was just like a fraternity. And I was the new kid, and I felt really picked on. And I was like, God, I get enough of that at Manly. I don't need to go and travel with a team of surfers to then be pulled apart again. So I then rebelled against that when I don't want to be part of this system anymore. So I didn't even have an amateur career. I'm one of the very few athletes that became a world champion without having achieved anything as an amateur. And so I went from basically the scholastic system to then finishing my HSC. In those couple of years, I also competed down here at Manly. We used to have one of the biggest competitive events in the world called the Coke Classic. And I used to go down there and froth about with all the world champions, just like absorbing as much as I could from them, learning from them, watching them. And then I started competing against them. And once again, I came dead last every time. But at least I just kept throwing myself in the mix and learning, because if you're not winning, you're learning, right? Unless of course your sense of self-worth and identity and everything about you is wrapped up in what you're doing. And then if you're not winning, you're losing. But that's a whole nother other story. So yeah, I hit the Pro Tour when I was 17 and then came dead last in the first 5 events I competed in. So I was learning a lot in those early years.
So Layne, what's really interesting there is you described that this concept of learning to fail, okay?
Yeah.
And that failure was okay. Now, how much of that was you had to learn that yourself, that was programmed into you, or that was what the family environment for you was like? But still, you've got to actually got to go out and do it. It's one thing to be able to say it and know it, but it's another thing to be able to go and actually do that. Now, how do you do that, or how did you do that? Because, at 16, there's a lot going on in life. Like you got a lot of voices at you, I assume. How did you manage through that, and how did you actually put that into practice?
Ben, I have a 3-step model for sustained success. And every time I'm asked this question, I always inadvertently go back to this model, because subconsciously it was what I was operating by. So the model is basically this. Number one, the first step is to articulate and clarify what your vision is for yourself. As a 16-year-old, there was a lot of peer pressure. There was a lot of distractions. There was boys, there was drugs, there was smoking, there was alcohol, there was parties. And I actually wanted nothing to do with it, because my vision was to be a world champion surfer. And even though my school teachers were telling me that it was a waste of time, the governing body of surfing was saying, well, there's no place for women here. The industry was saying, we don't want to invest in women surfing. It wasn't a very viable opportunity, or it certainly wasn't driven from money, but it was just my absolute goal and dream, is to hit the Pro Tour and become a world champion surfer. So everything that was in my world that could potentially distract me or sabotage that from me from that, then I didn't want a bar of it, because I was that clear about what I wanted to achieve. The second piece of the model was my dream team, and surrounding myself with people who can tell me that I can versus people tell me that I can't. And growing up in Manly, I was surrounded by dream thieves. I had a lot of guys telling me, you're a girl, get out of the water. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not strong enough. You're not big enough. You're not talented enough. There were so many critics and naysayers and dream thieves in my life that just wanted to suck the life out of me. And quite honestly, a lot of the times they did. There was a lot of times when I paddled in, tears in my eyes, feeling so defeated and deflated because I wasn't given permission to be in the water. And I had to keep standing up for what I believed in, because I had my vision, and then I was able to identify and therefore connect with my dream team. So if there was 5 guys giving me a hard time, there was always 1 or 2 that were actually very supportive and encouraging. They're the guys that are honest with you. They're the guys that have compassion for you, that celebrate you, that console with you, but they're honest and very clear with you. So they don't feed you bullshit. They don't say, you're amazing, you got this, girl. They're like, you know what, Gidge, there's a few things you still need to learn, but we believe in you. Do you believe in yourself? And then the last piece of the puzzle is, what actions are you willing to take to get you either closer to your dream team or closer to your vision? Or what action are you taking today to articulate what that vision is for you? So that seems to be what the model that I was living by as a 16-year-old, but subconsciously I wasn't aware of it.
So where does that come from? As a 16-year-old, where does a vision like, okay, so I all of those points I can sort of understand. But,
sort of?
Well, sort of understand in terms of how they're going to help you live a valued, meaningful, purposeful life. But what I'm struggling with as 16, how do you actually come up with that? Like, where does that come from? Is that just something innate in you? Did you have help to develop that? Like, is that a family thing? Where is that? What's that based in?
It was based, I think it's a variety of things. Definitely innate, because I'm such a competitive, driven, focused person, but also I'm a Gemini, so I'm very easily distracted at the same time.
Right. So you needed this to keep you on track and to contain you, actually.
Yeah. And I grew up in a very competitive, male-dominated household. I lost my mum as a 6-year-old, and then I'm told I'm adopted as an 8-year-old. And that was really the defining moment in my life. That was the catalyst moment that really presented me with choice. Do I become a victim or do I become a victor? And it was about focusing my attention on becoming, what is it that I want? What is it that I want to achieve? And then who is it around me that's going to help me achieve that? So I decided that, I was quite a good student until I started competing in surfing. And then I realized that as much as I'm failing in surfing, I'm still loving my surfing. So I feel that there was a variety of things that contributed to that sense of dedication and commitment and purpose to becoming a world champion. I keep coming back also to the fact that when my dad told me I was adopted and I decided that I'm worthless and undeserving of love, at that moment I also decided if I become a world champion at something, then I'll be worthy of love. So I spent the next 8 years deciding what is it that I'm going to become world champion at. So to a degree, my sense of self-worth, my identity, every aspect of me was wrapped up in becoming a world champion, and I just had to choose what platform that was going to be.
And so you become a world champion.
Yeah.
And when you achieved that goal, how was your self-worth? What happened there?
I was just satisfied, but that's about it. Relieved, satisfied. I've been declaring for over 10 years that I was going to become a world champion at surfing. I'd been declaring for almost 16 years I was going to become a world champion at something. So I know my peers were as satisfied as I was. Yay! She's going to stop talking about it now. But quite honestly, that sense of relief was very short-lived, because then I thought, you know what? I don't feel enough yet. I'm not enough. I don't feel accomplished. I don't feel satisfied. I certainly don't feel validated. I feel celebrated, but I don't feel strongly enough to go, okay, I'm not like an Ash Barty that go, I'm number one in the world, time to walk away. I'm like, okay, I'm number one in the world. It's time to become the most successful surfer in history. So what do I have to do that? Well, as a woman, I have to win 5 in a row to outdo Kelly Slater. No, as a woman, I have to win 5 in a row because Lisa Anderson won 4 in a row. But to outdo Kelly Slater, I need to win 6 in a row.
And was that enough then?
Yeah, I was enough then.
When you won 6 in a row?
Yeah, when I won 6 in a row. But then I came back and won a 7th one.
Yeah, but that wasn't without its difficulties either.
Yeah, I had a couple of years of pretty severe injuries and overcame a lot of self-doubt, self-sabotage, pain, suffering, struggle. I mean, yeah, my professional surfing career was a lot more of a struggle than I made it look. But ultimately, I'm a 7 times world champion. I'm the only surfer in the world to have won 6 consecutive world titles, but 5 of them were won in a state of fear, and 2 of them were won in a state of love. And the way that I differentiate the two is the ones won in a state of fear were focused solely on outcome, and the ones won in a state of love were solely focused on process.
This sounds like our coaching review.
Yeah.
Like the words that you use and the words that Ben uses as part of our coaches review when we're talking about players and obviously wins and losses and whatnot. It's very similar words that you do use.
Yeah, well, I mean, different sports, but we're trying to achieve the same thing. We're trying to achieve success.
And that's all comes down to the 6 inches between your ears at that stage, right? Because you're the best at what you do, and that's what makes or breaks a competitor. And a lot of athletes could become victims very quickly, and what that looks like is you become part of the blame game. So you're blaming everything outside of you, and you're not taking accountability. So I can imagine, Ben, there's a couple of questions that you'd ask your players around what accountability or what responsibility they're taking for the outcome that they've produced. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. We talk about when things go wrong, it's not necessarily your fault. Like things happen, injuries happen and performances decline, things like this. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to do something about that. It's your life, it's your career. But I'm interested, Layne. So 5 titles won in fear.
Yes.
And 2 won in love.
Yes.
Which, in our language, process we talk about being in the process, being in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
which we're going to discuss in a minute. I know this is something that you practice as well.
Mm-hmm.
How do you identify the differences between those 5 and 2? Like what was happening that was different?
Well,
when you're in fear versus when you're in love.
Yes, yeah. So I think about the difference for me being in love versus fear is I'm in love with the process. And that means that when I'm winning, but when I'm losing, I'm losing. And it's more of like a speed bump. But when I'm in fear, I'm defined by my results now. So when I'm winning, I'm euphoric. But when I'm losing, I'm an absolute loser. So I go from guilt to shame very quickly. Guilt is, I can't believe I did that. Shame is, I am that. And so when I lost in world titles number 1 and 7, God, I can't believe I made that mistake, but that's okay. I'll learn from that. But when I lost in world titles number 2 to 6, I can't believe I am such a bloody loser. That was so stupid. You are such an idiot. And so that self-sabotaging behavior became a pattern. So that way, it creates this emotional roller coaster ride where one day you're up, the next day you're down. And if you want to talk about mental health challenges, my mental health through those periods was really volatile. And the inconsistent performances were a direct reflection of my inconsistent mindset. Because at the end of the day, I've done all the work, I've done all the training, but for some reason I would go out into the water and find ways to doubt myself and find ways to sabotage my performance. And I had to find ways to counterbalance that. And I had to create tools to help me negotiate my way through that because, it was paralyzing.
What are those tools?
I think what everyone's interested in is, so what did you do? What are those tools? What skills do you possess or did you develop to help you work through those moments?
A variety of tools. So I used to have a little notebook in my backpack that I took to the beach. So if I had a lot of negative thoughts, I would write them down and get them out of my head because I'd free myself of them. Breathing exercises, meditation, lots of yoga because it was a very grounding thing. Music in my ears because I used to be very easily distracted. I wanted to know what everyone else was doing and be part of that and get engaged with conversations, and all it was doing was distracting me from focusing on the conditions and what my game plan was. Establishing a game plan A and game plan B, finding my on-off switch, so knowing how long I needed to get myself into the zone prior to competition. Accepting my feelings, accepting how I was feeling and acknowledging that I'm not going to always feel my best every day and still being able to perform. So parking that and being able to just apply myself to the opportunity or to the contest irrespective of how I'm feeling. So not expecting myself to be feeling vibrant and energetic and perfect every time I showed up and honoring that. Dream team members, sharing my challenges. There's very few people in our lives that have earned the right to share in our pain and share in our suffering and share in our struggles. So finding the right people to be able to articulate that with and creating the safety and the sanctity around that. What else did I do? NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. What else did I do? I basically drew on as many different resources as I possibly could, talking to other world champions. I remember sitting down with Kelly Slater before I won my 6th consecutive world title and asking him, how do you deal with the pressure associated with coming back every year, having to win, having to perform, having to be the best? And he said, get okay with losing. I went, are you on drugs? There's no way I can get okay with losing. I'm addicted to winning. And he said, but if what you focus on expands. So if you're focusing on trying not to lose, then you're actually reinforcing that behavior and you're spending more time on losing than you are winning. So if you can get okay with losing, now you'll focus all of your attention on doing what you have to do to get the job done. So there's a variety of resources that I use. Books, music, movies, you name it. I relied on it.
We hope you're enjoying the show. Our friends at AIA Australia are committed to championing the community to live healthier, longer, better lives. So here's one small step you can take towards a healthier you. We all have a loud inner critic. telling us what we should be doing, what we can't do, and what we're not good at. These narratives hold us back from living a purposeful, meaningful life and can stop us from reaching our potential. If you notice your inner critic is getting a bit loud, try balancing it out with some self-compassion. Be a bit kinder to yourself and notice the difference it makes.
Learn more about AIA at www.aia.com.au. All right, Benny, let's get into the long game.
So I was going to ask, one of your key skills then, or traits, must be you're curious about how to improve, how to get better, how to how to perform for as long as you did at this peak level. You must be really curious and must have sought out, clearly some experts, widely read, other world champions.
Yeah, and I have this relentless pursuit of improvement and growth and innovation. I was always looking for ways to be better. And in the athlete world, we often talk about that 1% advantage, and that's what I was seeking, but not every year, every day. I was thinking of different ways that I could be better. But then I also gave myself a break. And that's one thing that we don't often talk about is the downtime and how we utilize that downtime. I don't believe athletes have enough of it. And when they do take it, they don't spend it wisely. So I used to give myself a month off. I used to call it my fat month. And I only called it that because I didn't worry about what I ate. I may have drank excessively. I may have not trained enough. I still surfed occasionally, but I just gave myself a break. I immersed myself in the bush. I went away from the ocean, just gave myself a break from everything that I do on a day-to-day basis, and I would always come back feeling more refreshed. And then I would, dedicate myself. But I also, my approach to my training and the tour became more tactile. I started to understand how much time I needed to get myself back into shape and how hard I needed to work to do that. And as we get older and wiser, we can start to realize those things. So yes, I gave myself as many opportunities as I could to be better. And I never compared myself to my competition. Actually, when I did, that's when I was setting myself up for massive failure. I just compared myself to how I was feeling yesterday to how I'm feeling today. And then what am I going to do today to make myself better tomorrow? So I spent more time training, working on my equipment, working in the shaping bay. I knew my equipment and my fins, which were our two biggest advantages. I knew that better than the rest of my competition. I'd go and body surf Sunset when it was 12 foot and closing out just to get comfortable in waves of significance and consequence where my competitors wouldn't even consider that. So I did all these little things that no one really knew about, and that's because I just wanted to be the best.
Can I ask, how long did fat time last then when retirement came around?
When retirement came around, I didn't actually get fat. I may have lost some weight. I lost all the muscle that I had, and I've been able to maintain that size. I pride myself on feeling good, not so much looking good anymore. It's more about how I feel, and I pride myself on feeling good in a swimsuit because I still like to surf in one. But I turned 50 a couple of weeks ago, and so I've got to be realistic about how my body changes as I age and be more compassionate. But I still nurture myself. I have kind of like a set goal as to how I want to feel. It's not about weight. It's not about how I fit in my clothes. It's just about how I feel within myself. And that's one of my driving factors about how I treat myself. So I do the 5-2 diet. I've been doing it for 8 years. And that's helped me maintain my weight. And that way I don't have guilt when I overly indulge in hot chips and rosé.
What about, so leading into retirement, how was your then, I suppose, what were your goals, or how did you go with dealing with retirement? Because we actually chatted to the boys today about what it's like transitioning out of football clubs, which at the moment is probably one of the hardest things to do as a player, because some leave at 23, some leave at 34. What the next, how you are defined post your career is sometimes one of the hardest things to work out.
Absolutely. And to answer that in a respectful way, what I really want to say is life isn't about what happens to you, it's how you choose to respond. So retirement is hard for anyone, whether you're going from being the Prime Minister of Australia to now being retired, or being the captain of a team, or being a world champion surfer, or whatever, having worked in an organisation for 45 years and now you're told you have to retire. Retirement is a really difficult thing for everybody, and we all deal with it differently. And look, I had plenty of things to walk away into You know, I was running the richest surfing event in the world. I had my own charity. I was building a clothing brand, but none of it is as euphoric as standing on a podium being sprayed with champagne with a trophy above your head. So you've got to be realistic about your expectations. The corporate world don't celebrate the way we celebrate as athletes. They really could learn a lot from us. You know? So for me, it took about 4 years to retire. As far as I kept thinking, does the World Tour still need me? Does women's surfing even remember me? I suffered from relevancy deprivation. I suffered from depression, and I really wanted to go back into the world that I had defined myself by, which I've been a world champion athlete. You know, I've been on the pro tour. I'm a professional surfer. It took me 5 years to work out what title I needed to write when I filled in the disembarkation and the embarkation cards when you're flying around the world. You know, it's like,
what did you
title?
write? What is your title?
Hey?
What did you write?
Well, I ended up writing director because I ended up on a couple of boards. So I thought, why not? I'll just be a director. So look, it took time. I had to go and find a mentor. I worked through it. I had to reconfigure or reestablish how I was going to create boundaries around my life, recognizing that saying yes to everyone meant saying no to me. And a lot of those things and what I've learned now is what I teach others. You know, we all teach what we need to learn, but we also learn what we need to teach. And that's how I've been able to distill all of these lessons into my online course through Awake Academy. And I love helping people, you know, shortcut the struggle and detach from fear and silence negativity.
You're also an AIA Ambassador, who we are involved with here at St Kilda as well. We have our next week actually we have our special Spuds game, which
I'll be there.
You'll be there.
I'll be at the Spuds lunch.
Oh, fantastic! On the Friday afternoon, we'll be there too.
Excellent. I look forward to seeing you.
Yes. So as I'm not sure if you're aware fully about the story behind Spud, but obviously he's you know. Yes. Well,
yes.
So that we have that coming up, which is going to be huge. Friday night at the Marvel Stadium should be big. It was massive last year. But your involvement with AA now, you're enjoying it?
Yeah. Think well, move well, eat well, plan well. All the things that I learned as an athlete, as you have too, Roughead. Yeah. Now it's a matter of sharing that with others.
I wouldn't think I applied it as well as what you did. That's for sure.
Still time.
When you talk about fat time, we won 1 year and definitely came back with one person extra in skin folds. So we got in a bit of trouble with that by our fitness coach.
I don't do skin folds.
Yeah, well, maybe I'd love you as a fitness coach.
Yeah, no skin folds. That's demoralising.
Layne, you mentioned the Awake Academy.
Yeah.
What is that organisation? What do you do there? Who is that for? What messages do you deliver through that organisation? Yeah,
so it's a centre for self-empowerment, and it's essentially an online. It's an online portal for online courses to help people wake up. We're creating more centered, connected and confident people in this course. And it's about really connecting people with who they are and what they want and then what they need to do to achieve that. So it's not a goal setting course. It's more about waking people up to own their stuff and then learn to trust in love, because we're probably all similar in the way that we probably think that success has to be hard to be worth it. And if we believe that, then we will consistently find evidence to prove that. And if you believe success has to be hard, and look, I'm a testament to that. I truly believed it and I made it so. And it's very easy to find evidence to prove what we believe to be true. And if you don't know what you believe, then take a look at your life, because our lives are a direct reflection of what we believe to be true. We are self-fulfilling prophecies. And I made it harder than it needed to be. So I want to shortcut the struggle. I want to help people detach from fear. I want to help bring back the fun, help people find their flow, help people reinvigorate their passion and their purpose and their direction in life. So it's a self-paced 7-round online course. We also offer it through the corporate world, where we do this thing called boot camp, where I take organizations and their teams and their people through the course material over a 4-week period, which is a lot of fun. And essentially, we're really helping people through a whole lot of no bullshit transformation. You know, this is helping people just own their truth. And that's what the name of the course is called, Own Your Truth. So really helping people self-define and live a life that they love.
Layne, who's it for?
It's for people who have a growth mindset.
What's growth mindset mean?
Growth mindset. Oh gosh, is this like a psychology session 101? What does it mean to you, Ben?
It means you think you can get better. You think you can improve. To
me, yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I like to take the word think out of it, because to me, I believe you don't think it, you know it. And I feel that our thinking actually gets in the way of our knowing. So if we're thinking all the time, we're not feeling it. And therefore we think we have to figure it out. But if we feel it out, then we know it. This is a mindset anchored in knowing that you can be better, and therefore you're willing to do the work. Because a lot of people think they can be better, and then they overthink being better. If you know what I mean?
I do, absolutely. I love the distinction you make there too between thoughts and feelings.
Thank you.
No worries.
But, I'm not a trained psychologist. I'm a beach psychologist.
I'll just be the one filling in the gaps.
Well, come on, give me something. And one more thing, there's a competitive advantage that I learned in later years of my career that I wish I knew earlier, and that was the power of language. And when we use words like hopefully and I think and I guess and I'll try, we're not coming from a place of confidence. So I've challenged people now, especially corporates, to take the word hope and hopefully out of their vocabulary. Because to me, and I've turned it into an acronym, it stands for heaps of plausible excuses. Hope, heaps of plausible excuses. And to me, that says that you're waiting for everything outside of you to be in alignment before you can be, or you're waiting for everything outside of you to basically suggest to you that everything's going to be okay. Whereas if we can internalize the challenges that we're facing and the fears that we're facing, and then express them in a place where we feel safe enough to do so, we can stop hoping and we can start trusting. So if you've done all the work and you've done all the training, then you don't need to hope anymore. You actually need to trust in your ability, trust in your team, trust in your processes. You just need to start trusting in what you're capable of. And that's how I won my 6th world title. I was hoping, I was thinking, I was trying. And then I realized through the power of I am, the 2 most powerful words in the English language, is if you stop hoping and you start trusting in who you are and what you're capable of, I am going to be my best today. I am going to do my best today. I am going to get out of my own way. I am going to trust in my teammates. I am going to communicate clearly. I am going to believe in myself. You start giving your subconscious mind really consistent and clear communication, and your subconscious mind can't question you, it can't doubt you, it can't criticize you. It says, okay, yep, look, cool, let's make it so. And look, it's not always going to work, but at least you're going to be a lot more consistent with yourself and consistent with each other. And then you stop hoping and you start trusting in your own instincts, and you start trusting in your own ability, because I was coming second in a heat that was actually going to help me. It was either make or break. I was either going to win my 6th world title, I was going to lose it. And I was hoping. And then I sat up, did NLP, took a deep breath, and then I got into my I ams, and then I paddled into the wave, and I needed a 6.67. I scored an 8.5 because I trusted in my instincts and my training. I got out of my own way, and I won my 6th consecutive world title just because I changed the way in which I used the language. Is that going too far, Ben?
No. I think no. I'm loving the depth you're going to, Elaine. You use your language to power your actions.
Yes.
And that's we're certainly that's something we try to train our players to do. Is it's not about thinking, it's about doing. It's sport especially is about doing. We get trapped in our own heads, and powerless by analysis.
Yes,
which we're trying to actually go out and do rather than
you think on the training field, but you trust on the playing field.
Yeah, we're ready to go.
Definitely.
We've done this before.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Layne, we've taken up more than enough of your time, so thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you at the lunch in a couple of weeks. If you see 2 redhead white boys coming up to you, that'll be us. So
please come up and give me a hug.
I definitely will. But thank you very, very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
All the best, and we'll see you soon.
Looks forward to it.
Thanks so much, Layne. Outstanding.
Thanks, guys.
Really interesting.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Well, Ben, it's not every day you get to talk to a 7-time world champ. I was a little bit of a fanboy then.
Yeah. There's a fair bit in that.
What did you learn? What did you think?
Well, I think, for me, swimming out the back of the breakers when you're 4 years old, I can't do that now. 45, never been able to. And I think, the way your early childhood experiences shape how you see the world, right? So Layne, unbelievable story in many ways. Adopted, losing a mum at a young age. Really, then the beach, the surf became, her life, her family, where she found her happy place. We're products of our environment, and I really liked what a number of the concepts she spoke about there. So applicable to both the athletes we work with, actually or not even athletes, people who just want to perform to their potential in whatever field it is. But her focus on the process. I think she described it as love v fear. When she's in that fear mode, completely worried about outcomes, which are out of our control often. And even when we achieve things, it won't be enough, because then it becomes, well, what's next? Whereas, as with the boys here at the Saints, or anyone wanting to perform to their potential, stay in the process, especially under pressure. And I think I really like the way she described that as fear versus love.
I like the learning how to lose, because especially going back to when I was playing, you were always fearful of losing, because you always were on edge, having to win each week, back up. Especially when you're successful too, as you're always the hunted. So, understanding it was okay to lose, and if we did, what you can learn from that and how you can better yourself for next week. Or, who'd she go and speak to? Kelly Slater, who's 11-time world champ. He was the one that said to her, "You've got to get used to losing." So he's obviously understood and learnt pretty quick, what needs to happen.
And rather than seeing failure as a flaw in your character, a flaw in who you are, that you're not good enough, you're not worthy, she saw that as okay. When she was at her best, she saw that as okay. I need to. These are the areas I need to improve. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. Because I haven't performed to my best, and which, those things can often get confused, I think. And I think the other thing too is 7-time world champ. Self-doubt impacts everyone. It doesn't matter who you are or what you've achieved. That inner critic is really loud, and so I love some of her strategies, which she reeled off really quickly. They're hard to do these things, but some of her strategies for managing that inner critic in the high pressure moments was really interesting too.
I agree, mate. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you again next week.
Good on you, Jarryd. Go Saints.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed the latest step of The Long Game, don't forget to subscribe, leave a kind review, and tell all your friends.
And remember, breathe in and breathe out.